Oh, isn't live streaming just a blast? So much fun. Sorry, everybody, if anybody's even going to be here now. It'll be the people on the replay, I think, because ran into some major technical problems at the beginning of this little process. Oh, man, I can't tell you. I don't know what's going on. I wanted to use these external headphones and bought this little adapter. Anyway, let's not get into it. It's been a saga. We're now 20 minutes late, but nonetheless, here we are. It's the new canvas. We're going to be sitting down today with Daniel McDouall. Now, Daniel McDouall and I actually knew each other from eons ago, really. He worked closely with a mate of mine who I used to work with in recruitment, and he's a top bloke. He's had a great run, and he's a man who's actually gone through this process twice in a couple of different iterations. One time, he was able to, I guess, accumulate some dollars and buy into our well-known Red Rooster franchise, which is pretty much like on par with McDonald's if you guys don't have it overseas. And then further down the field, he came up with an idea and co-founded his current business, Squizify, where they help people to make sure that they're compliant with their food and safety, but also they do all sorts of things that ultimately help them increase their top-line revenue and to be more successful. And I'm sure he brings some of that past franchise wisdom to the table. So with no further ado, let's get the man in here and have a chat. G'day, mate.
G'day, Brad. How we going?
Good, thanks, mate. Yeah, sorry about the delay. What a saga. Right. Technology, what a joy.
Yeah, mate, it happens to the best of us, mate.
So, mate, look, thanks so much for joining us today. I gave everyone a little bit of a rundown, I suppose, on who you are and what you do, but I think it's always best coming from the person themselves. So just, I guess, fill everyone in a little bit about yourself and about what you're doing currently with Squizify.
Yeah, so look, I'm actually from New Zealand originally, and from a little old place called Dunedin down south. And I came over to Australia in 2005 with a good mate of mine. And we came over with the view to conquer the world with the business that we got involved with. And one thing led to another. And 15 years later, mate, I'm here with a wife, 3 kids, and the white picket fence, so to speak. So it's been a great journey, and there's been lots of ups and downs and a few different pivots and career changes over that period of time, which kind of led me to where we are today and with Squizify, and certainly an opportunity in a company that we're extremely excited about. It's been in play now for about 2.5 years, and pre-COVID, we were talking about all the things around personal hygiene and food safety and washing hands and all that good stuff that businesses should be doing. And now that sort of COVID's hit, it's really sort of shone a spotlight onto our product and our solution, and really sort of catapulted us into where we are today, and trying to really combat what is a pretty full-on environment for a lot of the food service operators out there.
Yeah, 100%, mate. It's a very tricky time, isn't it? I mean, it's just been crazy. Nobody saw it coming, or at least very few, if any, in the world saw it coming. So, and the food industry, particularly, I guess, restaurants and what have you, copped it pretty bad in the in those early stages, at least, anyway. So, what? Give everyone a bit of a feel for, I guess, exactly what your software does.
Well, my background, obviously working with the food space, I've been in and around food service now for the better part of probably 15 years. And throughout that journey, you do come across opportunities where technology really helps evolve and take the business forward. Food has really been one of those laggards, to be fair. There's been really good innovations around point of sale, rostering systems, marketing systems, but it comes down to sort of the compliance and the food safety metrics that food service businesses need to adhere to every day. 95% of businesses still use paper and pen to manage that. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out the dangers that it comes with that. The old tick and flick process that a lot of businesses do, and through no fault of their own, it's just the mechanism they've got in place at the moment. So we identified that within the environment that I had restaurants in, and it became pretty evident that it wasn't going to be too arduous to put together just a digital solution that we could capture what we should be doing, when we should be doing it, and just ensuring that there's no critical tasks would get missed, and that we were genuinely compliant 100% of the time. Even if I wasn't in the restaurant, we knew that things were getting done when they should be getting done. I had 5 restaurants, and trying to keep your finger on the pulse became very difficult. Particularly the type of people that we would hire as well within the food industry. They're typically 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. And at that age, they don't have a lot of priorities, and often none of those line up with your business priorities. So it became a challenge for us to make sure that we managed to keep everyone on the same page. So we designed and built the system that does that. And look, generally, a lot of business owners want to do the right thing when it comes down to compliance. They've got a lot of balls they've got to juggle. Running a restaurant is quite it takes a very multi-skilled person to do so. You need to understand HR, you need to understand product, you need to understand bookkeeping and sales and all the stuff that comes in with running a good business. And compliance is just one of those factors. So having the right tool in place that they can sit there and essentially automate a lot of the process, remove that human error problems, but really give them that detailed understanding around, yes, I'm doing the right thing when I should be doing the right thing. So they can really focus on the important things in running the business, like serving customers and growing top line revenue.
Yeah, 100%, mate. There are all those different things to deal with, and nobody, I guess, particularly young people, probably terribly excited about dealing with those sorts of issues. It's the compliance part of things. It's not, I guess, the bright, shiny area. And I can just picture 16, 17-year-old, and I'm not blaming any of them because I probably would have been just as bad as them. You're kind of doing all your stuff and, oh, yeah, okay, write the paper, as you say, tick and flick, and then who knows, that piece of paper probably goes in the waste paper basket, and who knows what becomes of it. So I can completely see how that would be a drama. So I always like to go back to people's genesis tale. I mean, you touched on a little bit that you came from New Zealand, but yeah, just take us through, I guess, the journey, because one of the priorities, I suppose, with the new canvas, one of the reasons I'm doing this show, for anybody who doesn't know, is that I worked in recruitment for a number of years, and I used to regularly have people come in and they would sort of say, oh, look, I've got a successful career, I'm making decent money, 80, 100K, maybe more sometimes. And they would say, but I hate what I'm doing and I want to do something completely different. And from your own experiences, mate, in the recruitment game, when you're on the side of the fence where a client's paying you to try and find people, you normally just say to that person, mate, look, it's going to be very hard. I can't really help you at all. Good luck. You're either going to have to start at the bottom or, find another way. So what I'd love for you to do is to talk about, I guess, your transition from when you move into being successful in that IT and copier game, to then how you managed to get out of that, or move out of that, I should say. So as they get out, because not everybody wants to get out, but how you moved from there to do something different, and then how you then went from Red Rooster to Squizify.
Yeah, look, and as said before, it's been an interesting journey, and for me, I'm 39 now, and I did the whole at high school work at McDonald's, and when I left McDonald's, I basically became self-employed. I was about 20 years old, and from then I've had pretty much either a self-employed role, my own business, or been a contractor in the copier space. So I've really sort of become very comfortable with being uncomfortable, and what I mean by that is that when you're an entrepreneur, you need to have the understanding that not always do you have a steady paycheck coming in, and that the job is quite volatile sometimes, but it's also extremely rewarding. And having that self confidence to go down one career path and then decide if it's not right for you, to make that pivot and jump into something else, it has become a little bit easier over time, but then also there's a lot more factors to consider when you do want to make those changes. I've got 3 beautiful kids, I've got a wife, I've got all these commitments now that I need to take into consideration when we are looking at making potential changes. And I certainly went through this with my wife, and we spoke about it in a lot of detail. We're back when we started the Squizify journey 2.5 years ago, that, is this something that we really want to do? It becomes very difficult for a long period of time before you can actually sit there and say, hey, I'm successful. Very rarely does it happen overnight, but you certainly got to have that understanding around what is ahead of you, what sort of challenges are going to come ahead of you, but be comfortable with that and understand, it is going to be challenging, but we need to take that step forward and work as a family unit to work towards that goal. We're pretty fortunate in the fact that because I've done it a few times, it was a case of moving from selling photocopiers in New Zealand for a company called Rico. It was a really, really good learning experience. Literally a door-to-door salesman selling photocopiers. It's a pretty tough gig. Coming to Australia, trying a few different businesses of our own, and then falling into a role with Xerox and doing the same thing essentially, selling photocopiers. Really good money involved with that. Had a really good time, made a lot of really good friends. It was an industry that was quite exciting, very cutting edge when it comes to technology, even though it's photocopy is a photocopier. There's lots of other factors that go into it. But I think eventually I found it wasn't quite where my calling was. And that's when we made that decision to walk away from, once again, quite a lucrative package into starting my own recruitment company. That was a big stepping stone. Lots of learnings in that process. But I had a really good partner that we started that business with. And I think there's a lot of goodness that came out of understanding what we were trying to achieve, the market we were in, and just the fact that we could be our own boss and tackle the world was something that really gave us a lot of confidence. And then from there, we got out of recruitment, and I got into Red Rooster, and Red Rooster has been, it was a really good journey. Working in the food environment and dealing with all sorts of facets of people. Once again, dealing with younger kids right through to older kids, through to young adults, through to old adults. It was just a really massive, big combination of learnings with that. And it was a tough gig. When I first got into the franchise space, I was told by a very experienced person that it's a young man's game working in the food space. And what I meant by that is that it's just constant go. Physically it's demanding, mentally it's demanding. You're going to have some challenges, you're going to have some really good wins. But overall, it was something that, we felt very confident that we could get in there and tackle. So I've spent there a better part of 8 years now within that space. And, if I had a chance to go do it again, I would. It's been a really, really good journey for me. And the learnings you get out of it have been amazing. So I think food is a very resilient industry to be in, and particularly with the environment we find at the moment. People have still got to eat. As much as you never have a 100% recession-proof industry, I think food, if you're in the right environment, and the restrictions aren't too great, people have still got to get out. They've got to eat, and that's a big part of what we do. Is we've been able to supply a service and a product that consumers are really after at the moment. So we've been pretty fortunate.
Yeah. So to sort of get quite granular, I guess, with things, when you were going to leave Xerox and go to so you had the stepping stone there, doing the recruitment piece. But when you wanted to go from the recruitment industry and get into Red Rooster, was it is it just a case of buying your way in? Like, for people who perhaps haven't looked at the franchise model or don't understand what that looks like, I think it's worthwhile for them to maybe sort of understand how that could be an avenue for them, what kind of support there is, if any, when they cross over that other side of the fence.
Yeah, look, I think I can go back to my grassroots a little bit. Like working at McDonald's, I think I spent like 4 or 5 years at McDonald's when I was younger, and just really got a taste for the for the food space. Coming over to Australia and looking at the opportunities that were over here. Look, McDonald's is very difficult to get into. You go into somewhere like Hungry Jack's, also very difficult to get into, and same with KFC. So the top 3 brands that we sort of looked at to start with were pretty much a closed door in regards to getting a new franchisee into that space. And not only that, the capital that you're required to get into a McDonald's is huge. So for us, we had to work with our budget, and we looked at a number of different franchises. Some really good ones in Australia. The likes of Subway at the time. There's a number of other food ones that we thought we were quite interested in, but Red Rooster sort of fell into the space of it's got great real estate. It's got 360 odd locations around the country. A really good brand presence, albeit it was a little bit dated at the time. It had great potential. That kind of old saying of the worst house on the best street. I think that's where Red Rooster sat.
Yeah.
And it's evolved over the times as well, and become a lot more powerful brand than what it was when I first got into it.
It was a bit beat up. I understand what you're saying. Like, you kind of sort of thought, like you'd often go into a Red Rooster and there just wasn't like a level. You had a sense of there wasn't a level of pride taking place. You know what I mean? Like things would just be a little bit out of order and just not as tight, I suppose, as polished as you say, like McDonald's was. So what did they do, and I guess you were obviously part of it, and you were able to grow and end up with 5 stores, which is a great accomplishment. So congratulations, on that effort. What sort of transpired during that sort of time period?
Well, when I got onto it, I always had big goals within Reds. I think giving one store and just being happy with one store just isn't part of my DNA. So getting into the brand, and part of the whole pre-recruitment piece was around understanding, can I grow within the brand? What sort of funding would I need to grow in the brand? How does that look from a structure perspective, and what people would I need to get involved with? So yes, that was a big part of it. And then Red Rooster ticked all those boxes. So we made that commitment. I'll be back in 2012 now to get into the brand, and like from a funding point of view, franchising's a fantastic vehicle to get into business. Running a restaurant as a sole operator at the best of times is difficult. At least going into a brand, you have a little bit of security with the right processes and systems that they provide. So yes, there was a level of comfort there by going and being part of a big brand like that. And look, mate, when you're looking at taking the next step in the financial commitment you need to do, and once again, I was only just been married, my first child was on the way. I needed a little bit of stability and understanding that I'm going to partner with a brand that is going to be around for the long term. So we've got on that, and we did look at potentially opening up our own spot, but it quickly became just not an option we thought was feasible at the time. And look, franchising is certainly one of those things where you've got a level of comfort knowing that there's a success ratio there being part of a big brand, and very few businesses and franchising fail as quickly as they do if they're independent. So that was a big part of it as well. So we got one store, I think it was within about 12 months. We built that store up, and we spent some money on the outside of refurbs and internals, and just got all the basic metrics humming. Things like quality of product, speed of service, just making sure the customer piece was really nailed down, and that people really had a great experience by coming to our restaurants. And from that, we managed to double the value in the business within 12 months. So we used the equity that we gained in that. We built another store, did the same there, and then it just sort of grew from there. And before you know it, we had 5 stores, and it was a pretty big business. With that became a whole new set of challenges, and where you can have your finger on the pulse and really have a tangible effect on individual staff members and the performance of a store. When you've got 5 stores, it becomes much more difficult to have that effect on it. So therefore, the focus then became on making sure we had the right people, the right leaders within the business. The food industry doesn't pay amazing money, so sometimes it was difficult to try and attract high quality individuals for the money that was being on offer. But in saying that, it's not just about the money that you offer; it's about the package, the value, the career progression, and giving young people that you can see opportunity and an ability at a young age to step up into manager roles and restaurant manager roles and so on and so forth. So my role very, very quickly pivoted, and I guess leaning I guess upon that entrepreneurial spirit, you want to see, how can I make this work? What do I need as my next big thing to tick off in order to get to the next stage? And for us to buy another restaurant, I needed to make sure that I had the right people at my first restaurant before I bought a second restaurant, and then so on and so forth. So there's a whole understanding around that growth mindset, and being I guess having the ability to focus on what does need to be done right here and now, but having the big picture mindset as well to say, right, this is where I want to get to. These are things I need to do now to get there.
Yeah, I imagine that like the recruitment experience probably came in pretty handy, having a bit of time to, get that. It's a combination of, I guess, of gut feel and logic, right? So you can kind of look at numbers and look at performance and look at up metrics, and then you've also got that element of getting to know someone, and I love that sort of component that you're talking about there. And I could see, you being someone who would succeed in that because you've got a lot of knowledge to share, and you actually genuinely care. So you're going to kind of I guess boost those people. Just winding back for just a moment, because something I wanted to, I guess, expand on it, and it's something that I've experienced probably the other side of the fence throughout some of my journeys. When you're talking about that level of comfort going into Red Rooster, that's not to be sneezed at. So for people who are kind of thinking about making a shift, in my mind, at least with something like that, that people can succeed at it, right? Like, you've seen other people like who are already performing. The business has been around for a long time. So, there's a brand there. Whereas when you go out to do something completely on your own, and particularly like, I'm in this situation here where I'm just working in my office by myself, sometimes it's kind of hard to, there's no measuring stick to track yourself against. You can't sort of look over at somebody else and go, okay, that's how things are rolling, and this is kind of what I need to do for this to succeed. So it's you got pluses and minuses, right? Like, you're doing your own thing. It's quite exciting because it feels very pioneering, and that sense of adventure and exploration, and you've got complete free reign in terms of your marketing, and there's a lot of freedom. But then there's also issues like, I've just got way too much stuff to do. Like, I would far prefer to have somebody else looking after my tech issues than me trying to be the tech operator, the accountant, the salesperson, the ideas guy, doing all those different things.
I think you're 100% correct. And that was probably the biggest challenge that a lot of business owners will face, is they try to do everything themselves. And, running a business, you have so many things you have to do. The successful people within any business, they understand how to use the people around them to leverage their abilities, but also understand where the weaknesses are and bring the right people into that. And the Red Rooster piece was a classic example. You do a 12-hour shift on the floor at any restaurant, you're knackered at the end of it. You're in a constant state of hustle. You're rushing around doing things. To then sit down and really focus, the next 2 hours after that on your bookkeeping and your marketing and all your other bits and pieces, it doesn't set you up for success. So that's where the franchise space works really well, because they've got systems there, and you can really leverage across that for resources and help. But also when you move into, I notice a lot of the stuff I've utilized within Red Rooster, moving into Squizify, once again, you feel like as an entrepreneur with a startup, you have to do everything yourself in the early stages. But I think the bigger picture is understanding at what stage do you then start to relinquish some of that control. Who do you bring in to start helping and advising? Getting advice and help doesn't cost the world. You just need to understand where to ask those right questions. Who are people that have been there, done that before? A lot of people these days are happy to give free advice on where you need to do things. And nearly the most important piece of advice they give you is around, make sure you surround yourself with the right people. Make sure your team doesn't necessarily just jump on board and agree with everything you say. They challenge you. They have different things they bring to the table. If everyone just agrees with you, then why have you bringing other people in? The idea is to try and bring different dynamics and different personalities, and a lot of the success that we see, particularly in the Australian startup, the businesses have got great founders, but they've got great founders with diversity. They bring different skill sets to the table, and the founders understand that. The founders are very much keen and willing to relinquish a lot of the key parts of their business that they're just not good at. And bring experts into the table. I've always been a massive fan of being the dumbest person in the room. If I'm the dumbest person in the room, then I'm in the right room.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, that's for me part of with Flicks for Good, and I'm going to include it when I do my crowdfunding video and do that kind of rollout. Part of what I'm going to do is a little bit of who's Brad Houston anyway, because ultimately, I'm just some random guy, now living on the Sunshine Coast in Australia, right? So I'm going to build this video streaming platform and try and take on the world and, raise money for charity and shake up a whole bunch of different sectors all in one go. But I know from my own personal journey and the successes and the failures, I can be probably, I can outshine some people in certain areas, but then in other areas, get completely walked over. You know what I mean? And so for me, having worked in recruitment, I've met a lot of great people, and that I count that. It's sort of funny now that I'm in this space where it's literally kind of heading towards becoming a reality. But for many years, I thought to myself, you know what? All these years I've spent working in recruitment, and all these years I've spent working in Brisbane and dealing with different businesses around the place, I've met some amazingly talented people. And when you meet somebody and they're the real deal, there's certain other people who function pretty well in that role, but this person outshines everybody. And I was just actually watching an interview with I feel bad now, but the founder of TED Talks, whatever his name is, the guy who founded TED Talks, is interviewing not Jeff Bezos. Anyway, the founder of Netflix, and he was saying that that's part of their success strategy is ultimately they taught a human capital equation where they try and get people who can potentially do 10 to 100 times more or better than other people in the same sorts of roles, and that way they try and keep their team leaner. So that's, I think, if I get the chance, I can get the dollars, then I can go, okay, tap all these people on the shoulder, and say, hey, g'day, remember me from such scenes as, Hudson Recruitment or whatever, and how would you like to come on this crazy adventure with me? I think that's, I think it's a good way to go. So let's talk about, I guess, how you morphed from, because you're not running Red Rooster stores anymore, are you? You're all in on Squizify?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I guess, how it started to germinate in your mind. And then the bits and pieces, I guess, that you did on the sideline before you then went all in, what that sort of looked like.
Yeah, look, I think sometimes when you have an idea, and look, any entrepreneur will tell you they have hundreds of ideas, always floating around. And the key difference between an idea and actual reality is taking it to the next step and actually putting some substance behind it. So, we did a lot of research on it. So not only looking at what current systems are in market at the moment, but then taking a step forward and going, where is this going? What's the journey of the restaurant compliance space? And clearly the paper process was never going to be a long-term plan. But it's not just a case of digitizing what they're currently doing with the paper. We need to take it a step further and make it quite intuitive. We've got a level of AI we've built into the platform. We're taking it to the phase where it's not just a system that ticks a box, but it's a system that adds value to the business operations. So for us, the first process was, is there a market for this? And pretty quickly we found out that 95% of food businesses, not only just in Australia, but globally, were using paper to manage this part of their business. It became pretty evident that there's a big opportunity here. So after looking at that, ticking the box, saying, yeah, we think there's a market opportunity, then we speak to a lot of industry experts and stakeholders working in the space to say, if this type of product was created, would you use it? Would you see value in it? And pretty quickly it became evident that, yes, it would be something that would add value. And then from then it's a case of, right, we've got traction, we've got legs in regards to the idea. what is the next stage that we need to do to try and validate it even further. So we spoke to obviously the key stakeholders within a couple of really strong, large franchise brands in Australia. And they gave us the sort of endorsement to say, yes, we would actually be quite interested if this was built. We found that there's nothing in the market at the moment that does what you're saying you want to do. There's lots of little silo companies that might do a temperature monitoring as itself or checklists as itself, but nothing that combines all the factors that we need from a compliance perspective to make it a one-stop shop. So we made that call. We drafted out and scoped out what the MVP would look like. We built a minimal viable product to get a feel for how it actually the user experience would be and what we needed to do. We got commitment from a couple of big brands to say, look, if we actually went off there and started to spend the money to build it, that they would come on as customers. And that was a huge validation piece for us, which gave us the commitment to really put some resources behind it. And it takes a while, but when you sit there and think you can build a tech platform within a few weeks, there are examples of that happening, but it's very, very few and far between. It does take time to make sure that you get it right. So we took close to about 9 months to build out our MVP, and to a point where it was actually a usable product. And then from there, it became very evident that other brands were quite interested in what we were doing. So we were bringing on brands before the product was actually at the stage where it was ready to go to market, purely based on the fact of we looked at what they're currently doing, and the key challenge or problem that the businesses were facing was not just at the operational level at the store itself, by them not doing what they needed to be doing, but as a brand, the risk profile that the brands had was tremendous. I mean, if one brand or one store did something wrong, the whole network would suffer. And food safety is one of those volatile pieces of the puzzle that if it's not done correctly, it can damage your brand in a really big way. And look, to give you an idea, if you go to a restaurant and you get good service, but the food was only average, you'd probably go back because it was really good service, it was a good experience. Right? If you go to another restaurant and you get great food, but the service was only average, once again, you'd probably go back because it was great food and it was a great experience. But if you went to a restaurant and you had good food, you had great service, but you got horribly sick through whatever you ate, that you're going to blacklist that restaurant for life. There's so many opportunities out there, and so we really.
Yeah, I know. Sorry to jump in there, but it's I used to always laugh about that. Actually, living in Brisbane, because there was that place, Venice, I think it was called, a little Italian place down near the water, near Riverside, and I went there probably in my early 20s for like a bit of a birthday party or something along those lines. Had really nice seafood. It was this what do you call it? Scallop linguine, like black ink, squid ink linguine, and it was just great. And I was like, oh, this is beautiful, nice atmosphere, everything, you know what I mean? Then you spend the night in the bathroom and never went back. It's just like not going back again. Yeah.
Isn't it funny how when you have a really bad food safety episode, you know exactly where you were, you knew what you ate, you know who you were with. For those that are old enough, if you sit there and say, where were you when you heard out Princess Diana had died? Often people can go back and go, right, that's the moment that I found out. Food safety and being sick evokes the same emotions and same sort of mental, memory. And so that was part of where we're trying to go to brands and go, look, how protected are you? And it turns out that they're not that protected. And they're just relying on this paper version of this little 15-year-old Jimmy that's ticking the box saying he's done it, when in fact he hasn't done it. It's pretty dangerous. The selling proposition for us is relatively straightforward. We want to make sure that brands are protected. We want to make sure that the operations at the store level are at the best that they can possibly be, which as a result will make a better product for the customer. And ultimately, the customer, really does fly blind a lot of the time. When you go to a restaurant, you don't necessarily choose that restaurant based on its food safety. You choose that restaurant and all these other factors, and you just take it for granted that the food safety is at a certain level. It's like when you jump on an airplane, you don't sit there and pick an airline based on its flying safety rating. You pick it on basically on the airline itself. You just assume that the airline's safe. So what we're trying to do with food, and particularly as we move into this new era. Sorry.
Oh, unless they're regularly falling out of the sky. You know, if you see the news every few weeks that Qantas are just dropping out of the air, then you probably start to think twice about it. Yeah,
absolutely, and that shows the power of the safety record. And food safety is just the same deal. And so for us, we want to make sure that the customers are getting the best experience, and by doing that and producing that good experience, it comes down to the systems that the businesses are using, and that's where Squizify comes into play. Is inherently people want to do the right thing. They often struggle to do the right thing because there's no system that they can really follow that gives them that confidence that they are doing the right thing.
Yeah. So what I was going to do, I was just trying to bring up. I had pulled up your website before because I thought that actually had some good images just to kind of show people. I mean, we did share a few in the banner that people probably would have seen some stuff, but it's probably nice to show some other things as well. So I'll just tempt fate here and then go. There we go. Just squeeze us a bit more too over there so we can expand. I can still see what's going on. Yeah, so and it looks great, by the way. I mean, you've got some amazing brands on board, which is, I mean, I know from my experience in software sales that if you have an anchor kind of customer in a particular vertical, it really, really helps. And, some people, they're really funny with software. Like, I'll never forget, I was trying to sell this high-end ERP software package to a machinery company down towards the Gold Coast. Like, they sell tractors and things like that. And the product basically fit perfectly, except for the fact that nobody in that exact vertical had it, right? So people who funnily enough, were selling photocopiers where you had to track the number of clicks and different things like that in the system, that same functionality could be used for the tractor and the monitoring and the bits and pieces. And without boring everyone to tears and going into too much detail, ultimately I was there for like an hour and a half. I thought this is a done and dusted deal. Had a really good going with the guys there. And then at the end of it, they were just like, oh, okay, who else in the farm machinery industry's got it? And I was like, well, no one. And that was it. And then he even said, look, come back to us after you've got another customer in our space. So like, people can be really narrowed down into that area.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to have that market validation. Ideas are one thing, but to have actual traction, having customers actually not just use the product but actually rave about the product. If a big thing we tell a lot of our customers is that after having it for 6 months, if we took this away from you, how would it impact your business? And it's always a resounding, look, we can't do without it. We need this as part of our day-to-day process. I mean, it's just so embedded now in what we do, and that's an important validation for us to say that we're on the right track. Look, we've got lots of extra features that we want to build out and make this even more valuable to our customers. But there is a starting point. And I think you sometimes get too overwhelmed if you try to add too many things and try to be everything to everyone. We're very focused on staying in our lane. And look, there's a lot of players that play in the space in relation to food safety and whatnot, and often they're an inch wide but a mile wide, an inch deep and a mile wide when it comes down to who they're trying to service. And we're very clear that we want to stay in our lane, and from that we get a lot more validation, a lot more proof points, and customers become, as I said before, big fans and raving fans of what we're doing and the problem we're trying to solve. And ultimately, there's an old saying: if you manage more often what matters more in your business, you'll get a better outcome. So if they're managing more often the compliance, the food safety things that they need to do within the business, they're going to have a better run operations. And that is a huge thing for customers. And it's a huge thing for the brands to grow, particularly in the COVID environment. There's a lot more competition now. A lot of businesses are going online. When you walk into a McDouall or a Rooster or any of your local that you've been there a number of times, you get a feel for what the environment's like. Whereas if you're at home on the couch ordering Uber Eats, you have none of those proof points. And there's lots of these businesses popping up all over the shop where you have no idea where they're coming from. Is it coming from a bona fide restaurant? Is it coming from someone's basement? Is it coming from a shipping container? There's lots of stories popping out around the globe around dodgy operators popping up online, and we as consumers really have no idea. At least when we go into a restaurant, we can make that decision based on, does it look clean? Is it inviting? Would I eat here? You can do that before you even get into the restaurant as you're walking past it. When you're at home, you have none of those touch points. So as we're moving the platform into other areas, that's going to be a big part of our future is giving businesses a way to validate and show consumers that are not actually physically in the store why they should choose their restaurant. And I think where the technology is evolving, and we're very close to releasing a feature that enables businesses to have like an online profile that not just enables them to see the food, but you can see the environment, you can see the rating, you can see a lot more information before you choose to make that decision.
Yeah. And look, I think one of the great things, by the look of what you've done there, it looks great. And if you take a lot of those tasks that people don't like to do, and as you say, you've got someone who's going to work long hours, and then just to have, I guess, that nagging thought in the back of their mind that's going to be there to know that they would know, like, this is a bit of a broken system over here. Like, this is, you're doing it with paper and all that sort of thing, and you don't have a good eye on what's going on. Yeah, okay, that's busted. But probably for a lot of them, they're just like, I'm so flat strapped doing everything else, doing the marketing, trying to do the accounting, trying to just function and have a family and whatever else they're doing, that it's just one of those things that's at the bottom of the to-do list. But if you can put a system in place that's going to, I guess, automate a lot of those things, or force people to have to go through some check boxes and ensure that the process is being followed, then that can hopefully take a bit of that stress off their shoulders.
Look, you're 100% right. And look, what scares me the most at the moment, Brad, is that there are a lot of businesses. You take Victoria, for instance. It's in lockdown at the moment. There are a lot of businesses that are really struggling, and it's going to be tough for them to bounce back. And when they do bounce back, it's not going to jump back straight away to what it was pre-COVID. It's going to take a little bit of time to build up momentum again and build up that revenue. So what really scares us is the fact that where are the shortcuts going to come? If businesses can't afford to do the proper food safety diligence because they need to pay the rent or they need to pay the bills, we need to assure that food safety is always kept at the highest priority. And something like Squizify, our solution is about $1 a day. So it's not essentially a big capital cost, but it's an insurance policy somewhat that gives those business owners a way to manage and track it to ensure that they've kept their standards at a high level. Because at the end of the day, we all want to bounce back from this COVID environment, and we all want to make sure that we can get back to our normal life, whatever that might look like in the future. And for us, that food safety piece needs to be nearly in parallel with what's going on with all the other factors with running a business. It's always been a hidden element that hasn't really been promoted as part of a way to differentiate a business. We firmly believe at Squizify that food safety will be part of the decision-making process as we move forward, particularly on the online space where it's just so crowded. And we really think that businesses out there that are doing the right thing, they're spending the money on training, they're spending the money on making sure maintenance is right. They're throwing out product that should be thrown out and not risking consumer safety. And they're doing all those right things. They should have a competitive advantage over the ones that aren't. And the ones that aren't, they need to lift their standards. Otherwise, they die on the vine, so to speak. So we want to help businesses that are doing the right thing get more revenue, grow their business, and ensure that food safety becomes part of that decision-making process when consumers not only want to come back to their business, but also retain and bring back new customers to that business as well. And that's a huge part of it. And that's visibility and trust.
Everybody's got super focused on hygiene and a whole bunch of different bits and pieces. And I know I even heard stories of people ordering product from Amazon or whoever, and then leaving gloves and sanitizer and things like that for the delivery people to hand it to them. So I mean, it's it's going to have a legacy. Like, you know, hopefully it's not too long before we come out the other side of this thing. Hopefully, you know, touch wood and genuinely praying to God that it doesn't come back again and bite us. But I mean, I think after this, people are going to be a lot more conscious of some of these different things. And, you know, whilst I'm an optimist in most scenarios, I think that we are probably going to face other things like, you know, stories of superbugs and things like that, where bacteria, you know, the 99% have been wiped out, but there's the 1% mutant sort of strain that survive, and that they'll gradually morph over time. So who knows what we're going to face, but I believe that we will run into other issues, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if something happens where it's more like a compromise to the food supply chain itself. So are you guys, I mean, have you been doing anything, I guess, that would sort of fit into line with that? And that, has that changed like your customer base? Like, do you start talking to council or government or regulators and things like that?
Look, it absolutely has. And I mentioned before that we were talking about all this stuff before COVID even was a thing. And what it did, it just really sort of emphasized the fact that before COVID, if I spoke to 10 people in a restaurant, staff members in a restaurant, how do you wash your hands properly? I'll probably get 10 different answers. Whereas now, you know, everyone's pretty comfortable with how to wash their hands, right? So it just goes to show that with that focus and that emphasis on a certain piece of food safety, it becomes a lot more adopted, and people pick up and understand it more often. But COVID, I think when we get out of this, the good thing about it is that the standards across the board will improve. I think the whole sanitization and cleaning and all that sort of stuff has been, will continue to be a big part of, you know, how restaurants operate in the future. They were beforehand, but they're just ultra sensitive now around that moving forward. But I think really it comes down to restaurants being able to present themselves in a way to consumers that gives consumers confidence to choose their restaurant over someone else. So it's all about the optics and ensuring that, yes, you're doing the right thing, but then you've got to sort of demonstrate that to consumers to give them the confidence to come into your premise. So the post-COVID world is certainly going to be different to the pre-COVID world, but I think there's particularly with food, there's going to be a lot of good innovations and good process that's going to be generated from that. That'll be good for consumers across the board. A good example of that is a company called I think it's Papa John's Pizza, right? It's a massive international brand, thousands of locations. They put this COVID little sticker on the box to say when it gets picked up from the delivery person, the delivery person can't open it, can't do anything, it's sealed. Now, it's only something simple like a sticker, but the confidence it's given to them, they've used that on all their marketing, they've really got on the front foot and presented the fact that no matter what happens, no one's going to be able to get into your pizza. It is a huge confidence builder for consumers. And it's not just pizza. I mean, you look at delivery bags these days, there's lots of concern around delivery drivers, you know, sneaking chips and having a bit of a sample of your food and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, there's certainly businesses now that are getting quite savvy to that and putting, you know, seals across the bags and making sure that there's tamper-proof elements to it. Is it where it needs to be, you know, long term? I think no. There's a massive opportunity here for this to be a lot better, and particularly in the last 6 months, where all these businesses have jumped on from their bricks and mortar restaurant to an online presence. You can't. It's not just flicking a switch. You know, you can't just use the same product and packaging that you're doing for in store for online. There's a lot of food safety elements and risk that's come into that. So I think there's going to be an innovation tsunami of different packaging that comes into play, how businesses really adapt to online delivery, and food safety, it needs to be at the forefront of all those discussions. And there's a long way to go. You know, I think food safety at the moment, when it comes down to online delivery, is pretty woeful. None of the online delivery platforms really have anything in place to give any sort of confidence to consumers. They're really just leaving it up to the restaurant to do it. The online delivery players are part of that supply process, and they're the ones that have just as much input in regards to how that food gets delivered to the customer, and the quality of that product. At the moment, there's very little there to give any consumers insights. So I think there's going to be a big push in that space as well. But I think it's exciting for a lot of businesses. There's going to be a clean out for sure. There's a lot of businesses that won't survive COVID, but the ones that do will bounce back a lot stronger. And look, maybe in some way, this is the correction that we kind of needed to have in regards to the food space. There's a massive oversaturation at the moment. There's something romantic about being able to create your own business and being an entrepreneur and starting a coffee shop up, and that's great. But there's a hell of a lot of hard work that goes into doing that. And I think there's an oversaturation of a lot of those in the market at the moment. So let's just see how that pans out over the next sort of 6 to 12 months. But as I said, I think food safety needs to be forefront of any business's strategy when they come to not only reopen, but also to really grow in the future.
Yeah. So, have you? And forgive me because I don't know a stack about your journey with Squizify. Have you guys partnered with any kind of other providers? So has there been any strategies, I guess, now working in with, say, like packaging outfits or people that are providing some sort of equipment or other things like, have you used any other things like that, I guess, to get traction? So I'm just thinking about getting an idea around tactics that people might be able to think, oh, actually, I could try and do something similar to that in my space.
That's a really good question, Brad. And to be honest, it's actually one of the first questions we asked ourselves when we built the product. To be a standalone silo restaurant solution is very difficult to get mass adoption. Part of our strategy from day one was all about integrating into existing platforms. To give you an example, we've got no interest whatsoever about being a rostering platform. However, our system will link into a number of different existing rostering platforms. So we know what managers on shift, who's responsible for the food safety tasks. If a staff member's cleaning, we know what that staff member's full name is. We can pull all that data through from that rostering platform that they use. It could be pest control, so we link into pest control companies, so we know exactly when pest inspections get done. The reports link through to our system. There's lots of cool technology within the pest space alone that restaurants don't really tap into, because you don't jump into a pest control system every day of the week with their username and password to find out what chemicals they used or what inspections were carried out. But often there's important information that you've got a restaurant owner needs to know. We talk to those systems to pull it through. So as it stands at the moment, we've got about 12 different integrations that we work with across different platforms, POS systems, cleaning companies, packaging companies. If you want to jump on and order a fryer basket, instead of jumping onto a system that has 1,000 different product lines, we filter that into our system, and it just shows the products that are suitable to you. So I think that's the key to success for us moving forward, and has always been a key go-to-market strategy for us, is that integration and connection in with existing channel partners. And we really think that adds a lot of value to our customers as well, because they're not having to have these standalone systems that don't talk to each other. They want to get on board and have as minimal platforms as they can in their business. And that's our strategy. And it's not just from an in-store perspective as well. We're very keen and in discussions at the moment with external parties and suppliers to the hotel space, whether that be equipment suppliers, whether that be online ordering systems, delivery platforms, review platforms. Customers want to know more information now about where the food is coming from, and food safety is really a mechanism that we're going to leverage to really give businesses a way to stand out. And so there's no point in us trying to reinvent the wheel. There's lots of really good systems there that play in a similar space in regards to we have the same customers, we're just completely different products. So leverage is critical for us for growth.
Do you have an exit strategy, or is that not really something on the agenda? Like when you started, did you have an idea of I want to try and do this for a period of time and then sell it? Or is it more like I want to own something, I want to build it, and you just kind of sort of see where it goes?
Look, I get asked this question all the time. And look, to be fair, it's one of those things where my main focus, and being an entrepreneur, I want to get out there and build something. I do suffer from, the shiny object syndrome where, I could do that or I could do this. But it's really about sort of pulling that back in and going, right, let's just stay in the lane and build a really, really, really good business based off these principles. And then what happens from there happens from there. I sometimes laugh at businesses that start up and go, hey, we're going to be a unicorn in 2 years' time, and we're going to be $1 billion business in a few years' time. And look, there's nothing wrong with having those big goals, and I think you've got to have big audacious goals. But in conflict to that, there's nothing wrong with building a business that's worth $10 million or $20 million. How many $50 million businesses are out there? There's not that many. I mean, everyone goes from 0 to $1 billion, and very little is in between. So, we're focused on just building a big company, and we think we've got a fantastic opportunity with what we've got as in regards to traction at the moment, momentum at the moment. We've got lots of exciting partnerships that we're working on at the moment, which I think will be great, not only from an Australian market perspective, but from a global presence point of view. Our product can literally go into any country that has an internet connection. Bacteria is going to grow in Australia the same way it grows in Mexico or the UK or the States. Yeah. So food safety is, it's not geographically restricted. And for us, we want to make sure that we are putting a system in place that, not only improves operations, but ultimately is something that can save lives down the track. 120 people die every year in Australia by going to a restaurant and not going home again, because of some sort of food safety outbreak. So, and that just comes down to broken links in the chain. That restaurant might have unknowingly done something that they just weren't aware of that caused a flow-on effect. And there's lots of really, really good technologies in place through agriculture and reg tech and supply chains, and there's lots of really exciting things that are happening. But there's no point if you've got all these really fantastic measures and mechanisms to monitor food safety up until it gets to the restaurant, but then the restaurant doesn't do the right thing. It's like having a pilot that's a fantastic pilot. He's with a great airline, but he doesn't know how to land a plane. How valuable is that pilot, And, if the food gets to the restaurant and they are the ones that drop the ball and do something wrong, ultimately that's what's going to cause the customer to get something that's inferior. And that's where our sweet spot is the restaurant space there.
Yeah. So, mate, I'm intrigued now. So, can you give us some examples of scenarios where people have ended up dying as a result of what they've eaten?
Well, there's been a few, and there's one with quite a large franchise brand. I was actually, I think, from WA about 4 years ago, and they had some dodgy chicken, and I think it was I don't know the exact age, might have been 8 or 9 year old girl. Suffered really quite bad traumatic food safety poisoning and died as a result. So there's lots of factors that come into play with this pre existing conditions and other bits and pieces. But ultimately, it doesn't take that much for bacteria to get to the stage where it's unsafe to consume. And I get a lot of it comes down to the training piece and understanding around the 15 or 16-year-old kid that's dealing with that food at any given time. Do they actually understand what the ramifications are around the bacteria growth? There's the whole 2-hour, 4-hour rule. Bacteria, when you stick a product back into a fridge, the bacteria doesn't die, it goes dormant. So when you bring it out again, that bacteria just continues to grow. If you put it back into the fridge, it goes dormant. You pull it out again, it continues to grow. So after that 4-hour period, it's now unsafe for human consumption. But a lot of people don't understand the rules around that. And unknowingly, it might have been in and out of the fridge multiple times, and it's been set at room temperature for 5, 6, 7 hours. That food is now unsafe to sell. It's unsafe for human consumption. So training is a massive piece around what we're trying to do, is educating the market, but educating the market in a way that you don't have to sit there and watch a 60-minute video on food safety. It's a 90-second clip, or it's a 2-minute, quiz, or whatever the case may be. It's nice little micro bite-sized information pieces that restaurant owners can give to their staff and go, right, you can digest this on the bus on the way home from shift. And that's the important piece, and then there's a lot of restaurant owners, as we've touched on before, that are great operators, but training just might not be their specialty. There might be communication issues, there might be cultural changes or challenges. We need a unified approach to that, and making sure that the staff that are actually dealing and touching and handling the food, they actually understand what they're doing.
Do you have some good videos in place for that sort of thing? Do you have as you said, like a 90-second sort of clip where something can they can watch it on their smartphone, as you said, on the bus trip home.
Yeah, look, we've got a number of these videos that we do, and the idea behind it, Brad, is it's about what's relevant for the younger people these days to absorb information. And I think back in the day when I first started at McDonald's, back in late 90s, we got a ring binder when we first started, and we had to go through and read page after page to try and understand what the process was. I mean, good luck trying to give that to a young kid these days and say, right, before you start, you need to understand this. The way they consume media and they consume knowledge, it needs to be relevant. And that's part of our competitive advantage in the market, is it's not just a platform that they can use easily. We've got the tools and resources that give them the understanding of why they're doing that in the first place. And that's the key. I think it's all about education.
I think that you like something you just said there. It seems to just keep cropping up in my mind in some of the conversations that I've been having, and I just think about my own sort of journey in terms of being able to learn or not learn. It's context, right? It's like it's the relevance. People actually aren't as dumb as what some people think they are. So, I think people maybe just tried to dumb things down way too much, and there was a period where everything was kind of like that kind of factory kind of process, and you do everything, and that's just, you do it. Like that's the way it's been done. That's how you're supposed to do it, and don't ask any questions. Whereas if you actually sort of, give someone a bit more, hey, like this actually can have a serious ramification. Like, it could actually involve somebody dying, for example. They might actually go, oh, okay, I'm going to pay a bit more attention to this.
Well, there's a law that passed in Australia not that long ago that actually made CEOs of brands liable for any negligence within their food business. So, if they've got a system in place that they know isn't doing what it should be doing, yes, it ticks the box to say you've got a system, but if it's getting falsified and fudged and fabricated all the time, if something actually does happen, and lawyers get onto that and actually can prove that this hasn't been done right, and it hasn't been done right for a long time, the responsibility actually flows right through to the owner of the business, and they can get jail time if they're seen to be negligent. And so there's a lot of businesses and brands out there kind of not really understanding those ramifications, and particularly if you have multiple sites, you got hundreds of sites around not just Australia or the globe, you've got to have systems in place that tick the boxes in regards to making sure the data is accurate, making sure the data is getting done at the right time, and that the whole intent of having a system is to validate and vet and make sure that the data that's coming through is improving operations. It's critical, and that's kind of where we see a really big opportunity is going into these brands that just they've always used paper. It's been part of their process for forever and a day. That's no longer good enough, and it doesn't stack up. So moving to a system that doesn't have it's not a massive financial commitment to them, but it can improve the operations, improve the food safety standards. That's the goal, and that's the problem we're solving. Improving
awesome. Thanks so much. Look, I think I've just noticed we've just clicked over. The hour, but I really appreciate you making time to come and chat to us, and it's good to have a chance to sort of catch up a little bit and hear what you've been doing, and congratulations. Like, I just think when I saw what was happening, and I had a look at the materials, everything looked really professional. I was like, wow, these guys are, they're doing a good job, they're having a good crack, and I think some of the stuff you talked about there in terms of, I guess, pre-validation and knowing you've already got a bit of a customer base or potential customer, almost certain you're going to have some customers when you roll out the door, is a really smart way to go. And I guess that's a good way to also ease anybody who might have a bit of an anxiety or a concern around what you're doing if you're going to be launching a business. All right, well, mate, look, so if people want to find you or get in touch with you, where should they go?
Look, all the standard social channels we're on, both only with my name, Daniel McDouall. Also just searching Squizify will come up. So happy to chat. LinkedIn's probably my preferred method of communication. But website and other things work as well.
Yeah, awesome. And just one thought I had is your package is applicable to a solo mum and pop type sort of shop and a large franchise, so it's still something that's viable for a little guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's designed for everyone from a food truck through to a large QSR or quick service restaurant. You know, we've got contracts in place with two of the largest hotel chains in the world. So it doesn't just stay within the Australian constraints. You know, a lot of brands these days do have international presence. So yes, any and all food business operators, Squizify is a good solution for.
Nice. All right. And look, hey, everybody who's made it through to here, thank you for coming on the journey with us. And please, if you know other people that you think that this information would be helpful for, particularly anybody who's contemplating doing something in the food industry, or you know people, you've got friends and relatives who are in the food industry, pass this on or let them know in the least about Squizify. And if you liked the show, please click like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, of course, so that you know when this is coming out amongst everything else. And please check out some of the other content that's on the channel. And just for what it's worth, I'm in the process of hoping to transition some of the content that I had elsewhere on. But there is also a variety of content on my Instagram, which is Brad for Good. So like Flicks for Good, but it's Brad, the number 4, Good. And you can find a bunch of stuff in the IGTV there. And of course, if you're interested, go and check out Flicks for Good as well. The website's just FLICKS, the number 4, good.com.au. And you can find out more about what I'm aiming to do in that video streaming space. And if you're keen to see something happen that can be beneficial to the world as well as be entertaining, then pop your details in there and then you'll be kept in the loop. There's no contracts or anything associated with that. Just simply it's a notification list so that people can know when we do our crowdfunding push. You can see what's happening there. And again, if you like it, you can get on board. If you don't, then just cruise on. Have a good life. Mate, thanks for joining us, mate. It's been really good, and let's catch up sometime soon.
Absolutely, Brad. It's been a pleasure, mate.
Thanks, champion. All right, see ya. Yeah, very good. All right, thanks, guys. Enjoy your evening, your morning, wherever you are in the world. Please pop in a comment. Always great to find out where the views are coming from, and I'll look forward to talking again. If you're interested in things in the not-for-profit space, tomorrow I have Change Makers. It should be on around midday timeframe. There'll be some announcements that come out in the morning in terms of who we're talking to. Change Makers is focused on people that have started not-for-profits or social enterprises or charities or people who are just doing something really awesome from a grassroots perspective that's benefiting the world. So if that's your cup of tea and you want to get on board and help us create a movement to create change, then check that one out. And Friday is Filmmaker Friday. So if you like filmmaking and you're interested in that, then feel free to check that out too, which really helps because I'm not doing things perfectly for the algorithm where I've only just got the one niche line of stuff. You'll see Flicks covers a variety of different areas. It's all related to change and impact and innovation ultimately. But yeah, there is a bit of variety there as well. So if that's also something you like, then seriously share that with more people because the algorithms are not going to help me. We really need probably more people actually sharing the program. All right. Thanks very much.